Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast, brought to you by Energy Dialogues.
Welcome to another episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast hosted by Energy Dialogues. We're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and with me today I have Steve Coffey, president of the Produced Water Society, and Tiffany Wallace from Occidental Petroleum. We're here today to talk about the issues of the treatment and recycling and reuse of produced water. So, Tiffany, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. So my name is Tiffany Wallace, and I'm the manager of policy and external affairs for Occidental Petroleum. I'm a reservoir engineer by background, and I spent 20 years in upstream oil and gas development, and then decided to become a regulator for the state of New Mexico. And now I'm back with Oxy on the policy side. And, we at Oxy, just a little bit about us, we are a leading producer and one of the largest acreage holders in New Mexico and in the Permian Basin. And we have all of our acreage is concentrated, or most of it is concentrated in the southeast New Mexico in Eddy and Lee counties. And we do have a strong track record of collaborating with environmental groups, which I think is going to be important on this subject.
Steve?
Steve Coffey. I am the current president of Produced Water Society. I also have a day job. It's an elected position. The society has been around for 35 years. We're a Texas-based nonprofit. Most people don't know that. I've been in the industry 30 years, so I started when I was 10, for those of you doing the math. But hopefully the lighting's good. But really excited to be here with these two. And in Santa Fe, it's always a great time to have these one-on-one conversations or breakout conversations. But we're with a lot of very interesting folks talking about the hot water topics of the day. And it's exciting to see that a lot of people are getting excited about water. And hopefully with some of these discussions that we're going to have here with Mike, we'll be able to move some of this forward and not just keep talking, but actually do something about the produced water in New Mexico and the Permian Basin.
So some of the issues that we see in the Southwest, Permian Basin, New Mexico, Texas, Colorado, and the need for new water supplies. Do you see the elected officials in the states that you work in getting interested in the treatment, recycling, and reuse of produced water for applications both inside and outside oil and gas?
So yes, definitely. I think there are a lot of people participating in these conversations, and I'd say across a host of states. I live here in New Mexico and Santa Fe. I work New Mexico and Texas and Colorado and other states, but those three, I'd say that conversation is front and foremost right now. And I'd say it's anyone from elected officials to the state regulators to all the trade organizations, ENGOs, the public. I've even seen school officials join the conversation, as well as, industry, the scientists, the universities. I think everyone is part of the conversation. And I think that how we go forward is changing that conversation to action. I don't think we always agree in those conversations, but we all agree that there is a water issue that we need to be solving and we need to be pointed towards those solutions. I think Oxy recognized very early on that there's really no competitive advantage to figuring this one out. And so, a lot of times industry can be accused of that and profit margins and things like that. But this is really a problem we all face. And so we're all trying to be part of that conversation to point towards solutions. And I think industry in particular has done a great job of, the reuse, we call it recycle, within our own oil and gas developments. But I think this is all about how do we use that water source that we have coming out of a formation that produces a tremendous amount of water towards other water needs for the states. And there's a great need for that. And that's where we get a little bit of the friction, the healthy friction that we need to progress towards, regulations and pilots that are necessary. If we don't already have them, we have quite a few. To move things forward.
Yeah. So Tiffany's looked mostly in the Southwest. Steve, as the president of Produced Water Society, you look at uses of produced water across multiple states. Are you
globally.
Globally, right?
Yeah.
Do you see interest by elected officials in these other states and other countries looking at treatment of produced water to provide additional water supplies?
I was just asked the question, and I hadn't really thought about the aspects of the differences between NOC and IOC. The NOC, the national oil companies, versus an international oil company. When you have the Saudi Aramco versus Oxy in a region, or in different regions, looking at kind of how things are done and decisions are made. I mean, there's lots of complexity, but I started thinking about the regulatory aspect of that. Normally I wouldn't be the type of person to say we need more regulation, but now when seeing elsewhere in the world where an NOC will dictate what is done, things get done. So, a lot of discussions that we've had recently here in Permian Basin have revolved around, the game of chicken and who's going to go first and who's going to do what. And I think a lot of that could be avoided by somebody's, maybe a state regulator coming in and saying, this is what needs to be done. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm surprised I said that, because in the past I wouldn't have thought that. But, obviously 10 years later since I started, looking at the Permian, the carrot ain't working. Maybe time to bring out, whip and with some fair warning. I mean, we've all talked about this for many, many years. And I think it's such a huge cross section of people, and water is so important. Water is life. I mean, water and air. I wish water was talked a little bit more than emissions, obviously for my interest for water, but also just because the volume of water in the Permian, for example, close to 30 million barrels a day of water. That's a lot of water. And that's actually, in the scheme of things, a small volume compared to the global, perspective. We're at 310 billion with a B barrels per day, and some project 340 billion barrels per day here in the next few years, depending on, even if we don't increase production and production stays, the same or maybe 1% more, water volumes will increase in most parts of the world as fields mature. It's just what happens. So I think it's a big, opportunity for us to make water, truly look at it as a valuable resource versus a problem or an issue or a cost or something to be dealt with, or much like we did many years ago with gas. It was a byproduct that was undesired. Many people today think that water is a byproduct that's a problem. But, we can reuse this for many, many different things. So I think there's a great opportunity here.
So are the regulators looking at this then from a positive perspective, that water is something that needs to be looked at closely because it has some value?
I think yes, and I think the real reason is because a lot of places in the world, well, actually like here in New Mexico, water is scarce. And I mean, in general, in the U.S., we do have more water than most places. So we're very fortunate that we have access. We turn on the faucet, water comes out. A lot of places around the world, that's not the case. So I think there's a big difference between, what we're looking at, here in the U.S. versus elsewhere in the world. So we've got a great opportunity, but we've got a bit of catching up to do. But the good thing is, it's other people and companies, and probably even your company. I'm just thinking of like what Oxy has done in Oman, some great things, and years ago in Latin America. We can take those lessons learned from other places and vice versa, and use those to our advantage. There's definitely more commonality and similarities than differences. So if we share those and learn from them, again, not trying to say, well, we're different here. Well, of course we are. Everybody's different, but what are the things that are the same? What's working? What's not working?
So addressing this excess produced water is potentially a good idea for industry. And so let's talk about the communities that you work with. Are you seeing interest by the communities that you work in, the small communities in West Texas or northern New Mexico or Colorado, that are saying, yeah, with climate change, we have a need for additional water, we need additional resources? Are they interested in the treatment and reuse of this water for their applications? Tiffany?
Energy Dialogues invites you to join key industry leaders, policymakers, regulators, investors, and leading energy companies on September 16th and 17th for the Permian Energy Dialogues. The forum, taking place in Austin, Texas, will provide attendees with the unique opportunity to gain insights into produced water management, industry regulator collaboration, M&A trends, and other important topics that are shaping the future of energy in the Permian Basin. For more information or to register, please visit energy-dialogues.com/PED. Again, that's energy-dialogues.com/PED.
So yes, I think that there is really broad support. Again, I mentioned in my opening comments around the reuse, the recycle of water within the oil industry for its own development. I think there's broad support for that. Not using fresh water unless we have to be using fresh water in our own operations. I think where things start to get a little, and I'd call it, optimism for the solution for formation water, treated produced water being used as part of the water solution. I think there's optimism for it, but I think there's a healthy level of skepticism. Are we there yet? Do we have the science yet? And I think we're in the earlier stages, some would argue, on the pilots of that program. We have some small scale pilots. We have pilots that need to go to full scale to understand those a little better, collect the data. And I think we're in very early stages on the education of what all that data means and tying all those pieces together. And so I think, again, broad support for reuse within the oil industry. I think healthy optimism and a little skepticism for, can we use it to do, non-oil purposes, maybe even non-edible crops like cotton, can we use it for that? Can we use it for industrial closed circuit use? I think there's some healthy skepticism there that we'll have some work to do some education on.
Yeah.
Steve, were you seeing the same thing?
Yeah. I think, looking back 10 years ago, almost to today, I gave a presentation for Texas Desal, and we talked about the hurdles in the unconventional space here. They all exist today, except for maybe one or two hurdles that aren't I don't see as a hurdle, is the infrastructure wasn't quite there yet. 10 years later, we've done a great job in the Permian. And then the volumes were not quite as large. So there was not the possibilities to think about it in a bigger way. But all the other hurdles still exist. So I do think, most of the issues that we have to deal with is perception and mindset. And quite frankly, this is the way that we've always done it. I didn't think that I would ever say that, but I said that about a year ago. I said, well, here's how we do it. And I'm like, oh no, it's you fall into the trap because, what doing this for, 20 or 30 years, the way that it's done. So we really need to break away from the way that we've always done it. You can remember that, but we don't have to put on blinders.
Well, and it's very common for us to talk about these things in our own circles. It's not as common for the communities or people of the community, or even, I would say, even the pure scientists at university to talk about some of the application of what we're talking about.
Right.
And so I think bringing that more to the forefront, and you said something earlier that I'll hit on, it was the carrot and the stick. I don't love that term, but I do agree with you that a regulatory framework is needed. And I think all of industry, as well as the communities in the states, would benefit from that. But we all have to be collaborating together to create regulations that make sense for what we're trying to do and not stifle us from solving the problem, but also make it safe for every stakeholder.
I think that just thinking aspect that I've never really thought about until just recently when people are asking about social media all the time. I think the general public really has not a great understanding of the opportunity here, or the potential problem, depending on how you look at it, of how we're using fresh water, for example. I think if a lot of people knew those little bits and pieces, much like agriculture, they use a large volume. I'm living in California right now, in an agricultural area in San Joaquin Valley, and people there don't realize the volume of water that's used for agriculture, and it's a surprise. But when people start to realize, the general public realizes what we're talking about, and can relate it back to water shortage, or having not to be able to water your lawn, or not able to have a lawn, or being fined, or paying for water, because we pay for every drop that comes out of the faucet in California, albeit it's a very small, well, I think it's a very small number compared to what we should probably be paying, but because water is a valuable resource, and we have to treat it a little bit better.
So as a director of a research consortium, as we collect more and more data over the past several years, providing that data to communities and industry, we're seeing some changes in attitudes. You talked about skepticism. You talked about people not understanding the issues of where their water comes from today. So, and we're seeing more interest by communities in using new sources of water and things like that. And treated produced water would fit into that. So some of the disconnects that as we're collecting more data, things are improving. Understanding is getting both from industry and communities and other groups, but there's probably still some disconnects. So from your perspectives, what are some of the disconnects that still exist? How do we address them? Do you have any suggestions? Tiffany, we'll go first with
I'll
you.
start.
Again.
Yeah, that's okay.
Ladies first.
Thank you. So I still see the disconnects. I know some people don't. I still see them in my conversations. I think, do we have gaps in the science needed or not? I hear people say we don't have all the science we need to be able to do this safely. But then when I ask more specifics about which science are we missing, I don't always get great answers. And so what I really feel the solution to that is, and we talked a little about communities, and there's a great disconnect from the avenue of the science and education to different people. They're not talking about it every day like we are right now. And so I think one of the solutions has to be that we all have to be doing this hand in hand, and we're all going to just have to love each other through this, because you can't have, what I see right now is there's partnerships. We at Occidental have great partnerships with certain NGOs and, trade organizations and other operators and consortia, and we're doing this across several states. But I want to see everyone together. We should all be meeting very frequently. That's, the ENGOs, the public if we can, right? Or more, the ENGOs, industries, state regulators, legislators, industries, consortia, going to the scientists, hearing the science, understanding the science, being able to give feedback on it, and then as a collective group in unison, educating the public about that and what we're seeing and what we're finding and where we've had pushbacks. Because you will see, operators, if they do not want to do something that is unsafe. And so you will see even operators push back on some and say, hey, we need to go get this at better scale, or we need to do this a little differently. We need the ENGOs to hear some of that and be able to parlay that to the public so that they can learn to have that trust with us, that we're not trying to just solve something at all costs. We are trying to do this in a way that benefits all of us. I have children.
Right.
I don't want to do anything terrible to the earth. And I was a regulator as well. So that's a little of what I see in my suggested solution. It just needs to be more together, more frequently with the science, and united front on education.
Right. It was suggested a while back, I thought half jokingly, but it wasn't. It was real, that we do some TikToks on this topic to get, because obviously TikTok is very popular. And you can do the dance, but I will just.
I will not. Are they going to turn this into something?
Yeah, we could little meme. But I mean, it is a great way. It's like how people are, especially younger, the younger populations looking at, I hate to use the word learning, but I'll use that word. I mean, they're absorbing what they're seeing. So it's a great opportunity to do something. Although I'm very resistant to do that, but I think
that makes you sound old. Come on.
I am old. Thank you for that.
Stop.
But yeah, I think that if you're the communicator, it's your responsibility to communicate. So
in a way that everyone can understand,
exactly,
and it resonates with them.
And that's a great avenue to get the word out. I think one of the things that we've seen at the Produced Water Society is having a hard time getting young professionals excited about oil and gas, or even give it a broader perspective and looking at renewable energy. I was at Stanford Energy Week a while back, and where there's a lot of concern about talking about certain topics, but it was interesting. The renewable arena, like even solar, there's a water component to every bit and piece, and actually the water issues that they're having to address or thinking about addressing are very similar to ours as well, and just as big a scale. Different approaches, but it's not like it's a us problem or a their problem. I mean, I think it's our collective opportunity to make change.
So you mentioned opportunities to get people together. What about larger demonstrations that are open to the public that people can come? I see maybe some benefits of that. I've suggested that in some of the forums that we have. Those are opportunities to bring a lot of people together, see it, kick the tires, and something that we might want to do down the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that there's been ideas thrown out many times on, connecting I'm thinking of cross-marketing some a popular, upcoming film or a show or something that touches on water, and kind of, to make it more interesting, or it's a hook, I know, but there's got to be a way to get people interested. Cool. And maybe the science that maybe not so interesting.
More tangible, like sites and things like that.
Yeah.
I think if you're talking that, I would say yes. I think that could be really valuable. If we can make it safe, because you're well aware of all the training and safety training that we go through to be on those sites, and we'd need to just make it safe so that it is educational and beneficial.
Well, that's about all we have time for, and thank you very much for participating. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast. We hope you enjoyed this engaging conversation. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss out on an episode of the Energy Perspectives. For more information on Energy Dialogues, please visit energy-dialogues.com. Until next time.